Some of you may already know that Monica Smit from Reignite Democracy Australia was recently arrested and charged with incitement by Victoria Police. She's currently sitting in a correctional facility and awaiting a court date because she refuses to sign bail conditions, which would deny not only her of certain freedoms and fundamental rights that we should be guaranteed in a country like Australia, but it might also have impacts on the rest of us, because once you give up on these types of principles, once you allow these authorities, these police, this government to take advantage of our inability to defend and stand up for ourselves, they will continue to walk all over us. And we should never give in, and we should never bow down where we lose these types of freedoms and fundamental inalienable rights, human rights that should be protected at all costs. And I think Monica is right now fighting a very principled fight. Now, I know Monica personally. She's a very hardworking, dedicated, passionate young woman that truly believes in the causes that she stands for. Now, the things that she stands for, I don't always see eye to eye on those issues. But however, I will defend her right to have those views, and I will defend her right to express those views, and I will defend her right to question our governments, to question our police, to question whatever institution that she feels like questioning, because all of us should have those fundamental rights and freedoms. Reignite Democracy Australia is a grassroots political movement. It might not be convenient for the powers of the day. It might not be convenient for the police that these groups exist. However, it should not be up to them to determine whether these groups exist or not. Bail conditions should not involve dismantling political movements because it's inconvenient for the government of the day. Bail conditions should not disallow someone, even in their own personal time, from discussing a topic such as lockdowns. All of this is just going too far, and it's just too ridiculous to be happening in our country, in Australia. Because our fundamental right, even to just have basic political communications, is so important. Right now, our governments are writing laws and doing things which impact our lives in ways which have never been impacted before. If not now, when is the time for different voices to speak out, for political movements to emerge, for opposition to emerge? When is the time? Is it only people who are elected and in suits that get to go to Parliament House that get to decide everything? No, it shouldn't be like that. It should never be like that in a country like Australia. There should always be room and space for new movements, for new political aspirations, for people to fight for and care about the values of democracy, values which are enshrined in documents that create this nation, and values which are a part of our Western liberal democracy in Australia. And this is a funny thing. Now, I was online and I saw this post from Amnesty International, and it just got me thinking, and I'm going to show you the post and read some of it out to you. It says, Zhang, and sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, is a citizen journalist who has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for reporting on COVID-19. Citizen journalists in China face consistent harassment and repression for reporting information that is censored by the government. Zhang is outspoken on politics and human rights issues in China. Now her life is on the line. She needs our help. See, we do this thing in countries like Australia, in the West, where we look down on other countries and say, look, our values, our human rights, the way we protect our citizens is so good. We're so morally superior that we can look at things that you're doing in your country and tell you that it's wrong. But at the same time, are we really that, do we have the moral superiority in that case? Are we not doing the same things to people in this country by shutting down debate, by stopping political movements, by telling people how and when and in which circumstances they can practice their politics and with who and how they can associate and at what numbers. This is all the tactics of these authoritarian, totalitarian, fascist police states, communist police states. And we are living that right now in Victoria and in Australia. Monica is a victim of this. See, I don't agree with everything that Monica says. I don't agree with everything that a lot of political movements say around this country. However, I will defend their rights to have those views. I will defend those fundamental freedoms because I know that one day it might be myself or someone else some other movement or some political party that I support that will be facing these kind of prosecutions from governments like this. So I think it is incumbent upon all of us when these things happen to our fellow citizens, whether we agree with them or not, to defend them based on principles, because principles still matter. And I think Monica right now has taken a principled stance to not sign these erroneous bail conditions, which would not only deny her of her rights, but it's a signal to these governments that we can do this to these people. We can silence them. We can shut them up. We can put these bail conditions on them and stop them. We can make them shut off their websites. We can make them stop them from associating with other people by doing these things. And that's not right. And that should never be right in a country like Australia. Even if we look back on the last 100 years and just think about some defining people and defining moments, and even just in general, political prisoners, the history is scattered with them. Almost all major political movements have at one point or another, from the governments of the day and the police of the day, on the military, whatever, have been charged with either incitement or sedition or any of these mixture of these two charges. That is typically what these weak, cowardly governments and police states do when they're up against political movements that they don't understand or that they cannot control or that they wish to suppress, because they know the impact that these groups can have, because so many more people within the community actually resonate with some of the ideas and some of the fundamental core beliefs of these groups. So rather than challenging them, all right, rather than standing up to them and saying, let's debate, we'll challenge you on these ideas, or, you know, you do what you think you need to do and we will do what we need to do, but we will respect your fundamental rights and freedoms without overstepping our obligations to protect those rights. That discussion, that way of interaction between different political movements, particularly ones which are grassroots, that are opposed to certain things in this time period, during this COVID pandemic time, is not happening. Governments are just deciding to use their emergency powers to just shut down everything and just have it as a one world view that everyone should agree with this or else. It's a warning, and it's a warning for all of us. But, you know, I'm telling people you shouldn't be afraid. So as I end this video, I want to leave you with this short interview between an MP from Hong Kong for the pro-democracy movement and a journalist in Australia. And it goes for a few minutes, but just to kind of for you to watch this and think how very much we are actually living this right now in Australia as well.
Is this a strong message that they are going to have to think very differently about how they take their protests to the Chinese government?
I think the authorities, both in Beijing and Hong Kong, are trying very hard to introduce some sort of political inertia into this city that we should all just go home, forget about political development or any fight for democracy or a more representative government. Just forget about it. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and there are social the restrictions. You can't take to the street to protest. Things may look rather bleak, but I hope I don't sound rhetorical to you. But seriously, fighting for democracy or speaking for the people, that sort of urge, is humanity, and humanity will always prevail. So we'll see. Politics could take a long, long time. A day in politics could be such a long time, and we could be facing weeks, months ahead without much happening. But I never underestimate the determination, the passion on the part of Hong Kongers when it comes to our democracy fight, especially on the part of our young
activists.